Good evening, this is Atmospheric Alex here with yet another severe weather outlook and discussion, and we're going to be talking about a pretty significant tornado risk. I don't want to quite say outbreak yet, but we could definitely see a few intense, maybe even violent tornadoes across Oklahoma today, and also the threat for a tornado outbreak, potentially significant tornado outbreak tomorrow, and then everything else after that, because there is more on the way. And we're going to start off with your Storm Prediction Center's convective outlook here. You can see a level 3 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, obviously here into Kansas, portions of Missouri, and Oklahoma here, and that is where we could be expecting strong tornadoes today. Again, this is your tornado risk, a 10% chance of strong tornadoes within 25 miles of a given point. So when you read tornado risks, I mentioned it in yesterday's video in the editing process. Again, 25-mile radius, either this way, this way, this way, or this way of a given point is how high of a chance you have to see a tornado, basically. And so we are talking about the hatched area for a strong tornado risk. They could have honestly put a moderate risk down here, but there was a little too much uncertainty with this mode, but that definitely wouldn't have surprised me if they did that earlier. We are talking about our wind risk, potential of hurricane force damaging wind gusts up here in Kansas City, St. Joseph. Your hail risk could see upwards of baseball to softball size hail today. It is looking quite significant out there. As you can see in your hatched areas here, especially cells of fire down along the dry line, will have your largest hail risk. And speaking of all your severe weather shenanigans, we're taking a look at satellite imagery here from COD Meteorology, same site I used to provide awesome model data. You could see this cumulus field here really being to build up across portions of southwestern Oklahoma. You're going to start to see some overshooting tops, which will then turn into supercells, potentially long-lived violent supercells. Again, I will have to wait and see. You see additional cloud cover coming through here, really starting to eat away at your CU field further south. However, only time will tell if this can sustain enough and produce your violent tornado risk. Moving into day 2, that is tomorrow, we have a moderate risk for severe weather, a level 4 out of 5 on the severe weather scale. Look at that. We're talking about Evansville, Massonville, Cape Girardeau, Bowling Green, Clarksville, Martin, Jackson, Memphis, Jonesboro, Clarksdale, Pine Bluff, and any areas in between there as well, where we could have the threat of significant long-track tornadoes. Inside of your orange areas, that is your enhanced risk level 3 out of 5. Still very significant severe weather is expected here. And this up here, looking a little bit uncertain in this area, but definitely keep your eyes on the forecast for Chicago, portions in northern Indiana. Talk about you guys in Chesterton up there. Well, again, could see some damaging winds, maybe some large hail, and couldn't even rule out a tornado. I don't know about a strong tornado risk, but something is trying to pop up here on the models that we really need to watch. And that risk is displayed beautifully with your 15% chance of strong to intense long-track tornadoes within 25 miles of a given point. We also move on through with your wind risk here. That is going to be very significant. Could see gusts over 70 miles an hour in some areas, maybe topping 80 at times. Hail as well, very big risk. So just going to be an all hazards severe weather / tornado outbreak across those areas. Here's your day 3 risk. As we move into Thursday, we have a broad level 2 out of 5 slight risk going on here across a pretty large area. West Virginia, Kentucky, Tennessee, Arkansas, Mississippi, portions of Indiana, Ohio, Illinois as well, perhaps, and then going into Oklahoma and Texas. I know you don't want to mention Oklahoma again, but this won't be nearly as bad. Day 4, going into Friday, same thing, 2 out of 5 on the severe weather scale, 15% risk of severe weather across a pretty large area, as you can see there. Though that day is a little more fuzzy on the details, though. Saturday may be a little more significant. We'll see. Could we see potentially an enhanced risk upgrade for Saturday? Maybe like, I don't know, in this area? Kind of a rough guess. We'll have to wait and see, but it could be another significant day for severe weather across a very large area. Alright, now let's head into our main risk for today. Actually, we're going to start a little bit further north in Nebraska. I'm going to make you all wait just a little bit longer here. You could see some supercells that try to fire off going into around 7 to 9 p.m. this evening. Could promote a bit of a strong tornado risk there. We're going to have to watch that. and it really looks a bit messy. You do have this supercell here, could have a strong long track tornado threat developing around, like I said, probably 8 to 10 p.m. north of Topeka, maybe going into Kansas City. Not a forecast, this could develop further north or south, but just kind of bear in mind there, and that'll continue. Congeal up into a pretty big line from Salina to St. Joseph to Kansas City, and that is where your significant hurricane force winds will come from. As we move further on off to, holy smokes, wanted to point this out first. Look at that violent supercell going north of Tulsa. We're going to look at our CB WAFs model shortly, and I'll tell you what that means shortly, as those are a little more accurate. You could see a scenario where we have a long track tornado going into Missouri tonight. We'll see about that. Further up north here, we do have that nice big line, that messy line of convection. It is going to be a loud night with tons of thunder and lightning, very considerably damaging winds, possibly even destructive in some areas, and large hail as well continuing on through. I do expect a ton of flash flood warnings to go up in these areas as well. And look, another round of potential supercells, a little more messy albeit, but around 5 to 8 a.m. tomorrow morning, we could possibly see a heightened tornado risk yet again. Not a forecast. I haven't really seen this from any models, so please take that with a grain of salt. Alright, so I promised you the Warn on Forecast model. Here it is. This is going to be for Oklahoma. And what you're going to begin to notice here is this is across 18 different members over here on your side panel. We're going to kind of flip through these really quickly to see any similarities. Well, this first panel here sure does the trick. WAFs 1 does actually show a bit of a clustery mess of, severe weather, some supercells pushing through to the OKC area over the next 2 hours. And over the next 30 minutes, that is not going to verify. But these models are a little bit weird sometimes, I will admit, but you could see just what your environment is capable of. Nice little supercell moving up towards Tulsa, but that, I would have to say, seems highly unlikely as of right now for that early. Moving into the second member, here we go, a little bit more realistic, but still too early. I'm going to be honest, still looks way too early. Another one shows the same thing, pretty intense supercell developing, in your northern area as well. So very intriguing little setup here. Something a little further south. Going on to our fourth member. Well, here you go. You have your warm, dry air layer promotes no convection, so 4 isn't showing anything. Moving into 5 here, you can definitely see a couple supercells. I just don't think this is too accurate, though. Let me try and find one that looks a little more realistic. No, because they all form storms too early on. Let's look at our 18Z here. This is going to fare us well. Around 6 to 8 p.m., we have a supercell already going up near Oklahoma City, another one up near Wichita. So, again, this is slightly older model data, but could be more realistic in this scenario. And look at that. Get this pretty big explosion here of supercellular thunderstorms, and it's going to be using up a very volatile environment here. We could see an intense to violent long track tornado or two with these supercells. So that blasts through the OKC area around 8 to 9 p.m. and continues on off. It could be a bit earlier than that, though. This one tracks up near Tulsa, this one just to the north of Ardmore. We're going to have to really monitor this, as all it takes is one on a day like this. And that is a violent tornado, very close, even closing in on downtown Tulsa there on this model run going into 8 to 10 p.m. tonight. Got that other one down there, so it's just going to be a few supercells, but they're probably going to be very intense, and that continues on through. And then up near Joplin, still producing an intense tornado. So this environment is so prime for just a high-end threat going into this evening and into tonight for sure. And fine, we'll look at our Warn on Forecast model for our dew points here and other ingredients. You could see right as of now, we are seeing 60-degree dew points going all the way up into northern Oklahoma already, so a very saturated environment to come. And as we push this through time, You could certainly see advection continues further off to the north in 5-minute increments here on this model, and certainly is going to prime up a very intense parameter space in just a couple of hours from now. Now, how about your warm and dry air layer aloft? This is your convective inhibition here. You can see we do not have much of it right now, so if anything fires, it'll fire fast across western, even a bit of central Oklahoma here. That is where we are really noticing our lack of dry air. And that could be a really significant player later on, but you could see your capping does start to build here in and around 7 to 8 p.m. But still, we're not talking about too much. I mean, minus 75 to minus 100, so it is a bit, but I have seen storms break through an environment like this before, and I wouldn't be shocked to see it happen yet again tonight. But we are certainly, looking at quite a capped environment going on, likely after 10 p.m. tonight. That is when storms should begin to struggle a bit more, unless they're bona fide already, unless we see couple of very intense supercellular structures across, say, central Oklahoma. These are going to persist in this environment for a good hour or two longer. How about your 0 to 1 kilometer helicity here? We take a look at this on the HRRR model, but it is on Warn On forecast as well. And you can see your values begin to perk up a lot more around 6 p.m. and 7 p.m. We're talking about up to 600 helicity. That is suitable for sure for a violent tornado already. And believe it or not, this really just continues here and explodes. I just take a look at this across central Oklahoma as we get later on tonight. Any supercells in this environment are going to have in between 800 to 1,000 helicity to work with in isolated pockets, possibly even higher. It is a high-end volatile parameter space that nobody in the world needs to be messing with right now. And hopefully no supercells mess with either, because let me tell you, it's going to be a bad night for these areas if something forms. Supercell composite parameters go like this. Wow, I mean, look at this. Already in your pinks here, going into around 7 to 9 p.m. tonight, and even a little further south here, splotching upwards into your cyan colors. Anything forms in these environments here, it could be absolutely game on, and just... yeah, I mean, this is a supercell right here on this model, and it is ingesting a ton of moist inflow from the south to the southeast. This would for sure produce an intense to violent long-track tornado if this formed. Significant tornado parameters go like this. Your capping really becomes underway and kind of kills off some of your values here, but later in the night, you can see its true colors. We're talking about maxed out parameters across the board. So anything that forms, immediately going to become a major issue, and especially if anything around OKC forms, well, I'll tell you this, you need to crank your weather radios on high and turn emergency alerts on your phone just in case a violent tornado gets close to your home. It could be quite the night. We haven't seen a parameter space like this in a long time, and if a storm takes advantage, boy, oh boy, it is going to end horribly. Not trying to freak you all out or hype it, but goodness, it's just going to be one of those nights, I think. Moving past the doom, gloom, and destruction, we're moving on to tomorrow, which has doom, gloom, and destruction, possibly. I hope not, but this is going into tomorrow afternoon. On your FV3 model, your HRRR is a bit of an outlier here, so I chose a different one, and it's a little less accurate, but better than, it's basically the best we have. If only we had some of our weather data, some of our weather balloons going up in the Rockies where our current trough is. I have a feeling our HRRR model would actually be accurate right now, but instead we have missing data due to some other kind of issues that I'm not going to get into, and it's very unfortunate and, especially quite frustrating, I'll say that. But anyways, your FE3 model. We're talking about scattered severe weather, possibly some supercells firing up near St. Louis going into tomorrow afternoon around 12 to 2 p.m. These push on through. A lot of these will remain quite linear, but wherever we do get an embedded supercell, you really got to monitor that. You'll get a lot of inflow going in, and potentially a strong long-track tornado could form. And you could definitely see some of these. This one becomes semi-discrete and definitely drops, something pretty serious here. A strong to intense long-track tornado near Mount Vernon, maybe. Not a forecast at all, but this corridor here, this right within here, folks, is going to be a very serious situation. Potentially off to the south that you see a discrete supercell in Bowling Green. That's another thing to watch. But this corridor, if you end up in this corridor, prepare for a few potentially strong to intense tornadoes tomorrow. It doesn't look great. You're going to have overrunning supercells, tornadoes going over the same areas that other ones went over previously. This is just a recipe for disaster, and I really hope that you all prepare for this, because you can just see this corridor. It's Evansville here, potentially a strong tornado with that supercell there moving through your area around 8 to 11 p.m. tomorrow night. I'm being a little more rough with our times because this is a little uncertain, but anywhere where you get this hooking structure, it's going to be game on. You definitely could see strong to intense. I would even rule out a violent tornado with this. It's I would say a borderline volatile parameter space for sure. Moving on into Ohio here. As you can see, look at our supercells, definitely going to be capable of tornadoes, possibly strong tornadoes, especially, really in your western half. Anything off to the east, probably not going to be as favorable for strong tornadoes, but over here for sure. But if we get any sustained supercells, still watch, and that turns linear, moves through New Philadelphia, Pittsburgh, to Pennsylvania. Arkansas, yeah, we have a lot to talk about. This model, holy, whoa. That is a supercell half prints a debris ball right there. Holy cow, that is an evil model run right there. Nightmare fuel blasting on through. Come on, FV3, be a little more mature about this, alright? This is just getting plain ridiculous. No. Moving into tomorrow afternoon, though, look at that. Discrete supercell here. Again, the FV3, not a forecast. Discrete supercell here near Poplar Bluff, near Jonesboro. These, for sure, without a doubt, look at that. For sure, that supercell there has potential for an intense to long track violent tornado. This one, especially in here near Texarkana, anything that fires up that's discrete in Arkansas, you need to be on very high alert. Really anywhere else across the board. Looks very serious near Clarksdale. Whoa. Yeah. Anything that could get out ahead of the line is also going to be a different story, also going to portray a very intense tornado threat as well. Moving further off to your east here, yeah, you could definitely see your cells really being to engage, and moving across Tennessee, your risk begins to weaken a bit, but you could see a couple more broken supercellular structures much later tomorrow night into Thursday morning, which could promote a tornado risk as well. You can see some of the boundaries there, and goodness gracious day, we will take a look at that on the GFS model. Not really in depth because Thursday is a bit far out. Your ingredients go as follows. We have a lot of storm energy here between 1,000 to 2,500, suitable for significant severe weather. Isolated pocket up here near Chicago, that is where you could see an isolated strong tornado. It wouldn't shock me, up to about 2,000 to 2,500. So we really got to watch these isolated corridors too. Then throughout the night, here's your corridor right within here. Here's all your inflow right within here coming out of your southeast, and your strong tornado risk would be along that area as well. Your 1 kilometer helicity here, oh boy, we are talking about a lot of red colors going into tomorrow evening and some grays. Intense to violent long-track tornadoes cannot be ruled out. I would stay more towards the intense side of things for now, but still, if you get a supercell in the right environment, it is game on. Supercell composite parameters go like this. We're definitely talking about elevated values in your pink colors here, right along that corridor, that boundary line. That is where it could get very serious. And then look at that. Later on, I cannot rule out maybe a strong tornado risk again, maybe in Middle Tennessee going into Thursday morning if this model is correct. Significant tornado parameters go as follows. Yeah, talk about the pink colors here, some purples, and then hey, look at this. Just notice that is off the charts going into Chicago. So again, folks up there, if a supercell forms, it could be a pretty dangerous situation. So crank your weather radios on high and turn on emergency alerts on your phone if you're in Chicago here. Northern Illinois, Northern Indiana, you need to stay very weather aware, as that could pop off something very serious. But again, further south is where we're watching, and anything throughout the night could produce a strong tornado for sure. And now we can't forget about our excessive rainfall outlook for Arkansas here. Goodness, we are talking about a moderate risk for heavy rainfall going into tomorrow. As we go into Thursday, though, it becomes a lot more serious. We are talking about a high risk for heavy rainfall here across a portion here of northeast Arkansas into western Kentucky and northwest Tennessee. That is going to be a very significant event, and some people are even calling it a 25 to 50 to even 100-year flooding event that we need to be mindful of. As you see here on your European model, we are talking about a lot of rain going into tomorrow night and continuing in on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, continuing Saturday, Sunday a little bit there too. That's going to be a lot of rain, and you could see, wow, on your European model, isolated locations could see up to 8 to 10 plus inches of rain here, and I wouldn't be shocked if they extend that high risk further down to the southwest. Even up here, we're talking about 6 to 8 inches, very serious. And yeah, a particularly dangerous situation, flood watch, has actually been issued for Arkansas because of this. Your GFS model likely overdoing your totals. 12 to 14 inches seems a little bit fantasy land for me, but we are talking about it here going to be a serious issue here. If you live near any rivers, creeks, and streams, you need to get out of there as soon as possible. Even consider maybe some evacuations, especially, in your Ozarks. That is going to be a concern. Severe weather will be too. Going into Thursday, we were talking about pretty elevated parameters in your reds and your pinks for supercell composite again. That could be a bit of a widespread event. Going into Friday, same song and dance, really, into Arkansas, again, talking about oranges and reds, maybe even a hot pink there and there. Again, maybe another widespread event. Going into Saturday, yet again, more wind shear this time, so a strong tornado risk probably going to be present across these areas. Again, in your reds, it's just a very active short-term pattern that we're going to be going through. Going into Sunday, we could see a little more severe weather going further off to the east, but it's more uncertain at this time. In your mean supercell composite, holy moly, on your GEFS, that is very elevated in your reds there. That is going to be a significant event. And you can see it continuing into Friday. Another very significant event is possible here across eastern Texas. And the list continues going on and on as we go into Saturday. Another one. It's just game on across these areas, let me tell you that much. And that being said, I tried to make it shorter, but goodness, the amount of details we had to go over was ridiculous. I hope you all enjoyed the video. If you did, smash the like button. Feel free to subscribe to my little corner of the weather community, and share this with friends and family on social media. For those in Oklahoma tonight, I cannot emphasize that enough. You have this area up here and then this area down here. All right, you have a wonderful night, everyone. Please stay extremely weather aware, stay safe, and just please monitor the forecast over the next, I guess I could say, next several days at this point. Have a wonderful night, everyone.